Right now, today is World Teen Mental Wellness Day. It's a day to raise awareness and talk about the mental health of teens and to help remove the stigmas around mental health issues.
So important, right? According to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, 1 in 6 U.S. adolescents ages 12 to 17 have experienced a major depressive episode. 3 million have had serious thoughts of suicide. So what can we do to help teens who are really struggling with their mental health?
Yeah, joining us this morning is Dr. Sue Varma. She's a board-certified psychiatrist. Dr. Varma, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you. Such a pleasure always.
You know, I've spoken to a lot of teenagers since the pandemic began. They were the last ones to return to school when everyone was starting to return to in-person. And they were kind of the ones that were always last on the list to be thought of. So I'd like to know where you think the overall state of teen mental health is right now, especially after what they've been through during the pandemic. What are they suffering through right now?
Absolutely. We saw that, teens already had a mental health crisis before the pandemic. In fact, 1 in 3 high school students were talking about extreme stress. And we saw that the teen mental health crisis, specifically anxiety and depression rates, have doubled during the pandemic. A large study that was published in JAMA Pediatrics just a few months ago showed that out of 80,000 children ages 4 to 17, with 13 being the mean age, we found that 20 to 25% of kids had depression or anxiety, with the older kids being hit the hardest for a variety of reasons: disruption in sleep schedules, disruption in milestones, not graduating, not going to the prom, not seeing your friends in person, not getting key mental health resources and support from adults outside the home, in the school. That wasn't there. We saw increased worry, concerns of financial and health considerations, and hormonal changes. So these are all the things that are sort of counting against and putting them at increased risk.
Yeah, seriously. But you know what's so great, Dr. Varma, is that we are talking about it, right? And we're talking about it specifically amongst teenagers. When I was a teenager, this was not a conversation that anybody was having in the school, let alone on the news, right? So what are some of the most commonly diagnosed mental illnesses among teens that you are seeing nowadays?
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that we are talking about this and you are so open about it, because this is not something that we discussed 20 years ago. Depression and anxiety, I would say, are the two biggest things. And under the mood disorders, depressive symptoms can include difficulty concentrating, appetite changes, weight changes, mood problems, and sleep, and feelings of guilt, worthlessness, and even suicide. Under the anxiety spectrum, we want to say generalized anxiety disorder, social anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder, trauma as a result of the pandemic. These are some of the most common ones. And often the first sort of break that we have, sometimes even in bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, where a person might be having disruptions with reality testing, there might be hearing voices or having delusions. This all hits around 18 to 22. So these are the key ages when kids are being hit the hardest.
But during this pandemic, it's a time when a lot of teenagers were in their rooms by themselves, spending time away from their friends. So that being said, I'm like, how can you catch these warning signs when you're like, oh, well, that's how it's been for the last 2 years. So them being by themselves is something they just got accustomed to. How do we know when it's normal and when it's something we really need to look into and ask some questions?
Absolutely. So asking questions is something parents and family and friends should always be doing. And, one thing I'm finding is that teens these days are extremely self-aware, and they have the language and they have access to information, and they're ready and willing to talk to you about it if you only ask and engage them. So asking questions like, are you noticing that you're less interested in the things that you once used to find pleasurable? So if somebody used to find something, whether it be streaming or video games, and they're not doing any of that, or if their hygiene has gone down, or maybe if they're doing a lot of streaming and not interacting with people. That's the one big thing where parents would say things have opened up now. They can go see their friends, but they're choosing not to. Substance abuse is huge. And any changes, erratic behavior, drinking a lot, coming home late, things that might be considered normal teen behavior, but if it's become worse.
Well, thank you for reminding me that it's been 20 years since I was a teenager, by the way. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. But you know what? When I was a teenager, and I've talked about this with you and pretty openly, I always knew that there was something going on in my head, right, that I couldn't really put into words, and I didn't know who to talk to. And I was afraid to go and talk to people as well. So how likely are teens to really seek out help when it comes to their mental health? And how can others kind of see what's going on and maybe push them to do that?
Yes, I think one of the hardest things right now is that the teens need to get their parents on board. It's not that the teens aren't willing to talk because, if you look at TikTok, there's a huge movement
Yes.
of mental health, Instagram, social media. So teens are like, we want to break these stigmas. We want to break these barriers. We want to get help. We want to talk about this stuff. They just need willing participants in the conversation. So I think parents, if you're listening and you're suspecting that your teen is having mental health issues, please, if you have insurance, turn the back of the card and look for a behavioral health specialist. If you can contact, even the closest university hospital, sometimes they have sliding scale or accept low fee, and ask for help. Psychologytoday.com is a great resources where you can find videos and you can maybe even do a brief free screening with somebody. Teens are willing to get help. It's just that the parents and the schools need to get on board, and we need to have something called, first aid mental health, which exists, and to have sort of peer-to-peer recognition. So not just the parents, not just the teachers, but people that are spending time with you to be able to pick up symptoms and to say, hey, I have a counselor in school. I think that maybe you should go talk to them, because they really have their finger on the pulse of what's going on with their peers.
Yeah,
So true.
such great advice, Dr. Varma, especially when parents are kind of on the fence on whether or not to say something, because this is that age where they want their children to be independent and to, for parents to say, okay, I trust that you can make the right decisions. But as a mom and dad, don't be afraid to ask, right, Dr. Varma?
Absolutely, don't be afraid, and go in go in with therapy with them into a first session. It never hurts.
Yeah.
Great advice. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Varma. We always appreciate your advice.
No, I love you.
Thank
Good
you
to
so
see
much.
you.